it is so good to speak to you again. And I'm going to try and do an unusual message today about people who are older. Now, quickly let me say, I don't think you're old. I don't think that I'm speaking just to an older group. I'm sure there's a wide range of people in your fellowship. However, I wanted to talk to you today about when you've been doing something for a while and you have some reflections about how things might not have totally worked out how you might have thought. I remember in my own history that when I've been to a ministry position, sometimes it just comes out completely differently. And of course, when we do get a bit older and when we are in the golden generation, as we politely call it, we look back and sometimes we're thinking that we've got some regrets or we wish some things had worked out differently. But usually in hindsight, we can see the hand of God. Today, what I want to talk to you about is learning the lessons of when you're looking back and thinking, where do I go from here? That's exactly where Caleb found himself. Let me take you back to the early history of Israel and to the allotment for Caleb. Now, the people of Judah approached Joshua at Gilgal, and Caleb, son of Jephthah, the Kenizzite, said to him, "You know what the Lord said to Moses, the man of God, at Kadesh Barnea, about you and me. I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea and to explore the land. And I brought him back a report according to my convictions. But my fellow Israelites went up with me and made the hearts of the people melt in fear. I, however, followed the Lord my God wholeheartedly." So, on that day, Moses swore to me, "The land on which your feet have walked will be your inheritance and that of your children forever, because you have followed the Lord my God wholeheartedly." Now then, just as the Lord promised, he has kept me alive for these 45 years. Since that time, he said this to Moses while Israel moved about in the wilderness. So here I am today, 85 years old, and I am still as strong today as the day Moses sent me out. I'm just as vigorous to go out into battle now as I was then. Now give me this hill country that the Lord promised me that day. You yourself heard then that the Anakites were there, and their cities were large and fortified. But the Lord helping me, I will drive them out, just as he said. Then Joshua blessed Caleb, son of Jephthah, and gave him Hebron as his inheritance. So Hebron belonged to Caleb, the son of Jephthah, the Kenizzite, ever since, because he followed the Lord God wholeheartedly. Now Hebron used to be called Kiriath Arba, after Arba, who was the greatest man amongst the Anakites. And then the land had rest from war. Here we see Caleb is in his golden generation, and yet he still has things to do. And one of the things that's important when we get a little bit older is maybe we don't do the same things, but we still do some important things. And so, as well as looking back to all what we might need healing from or what we might have as regrets, I wonder if you could take a moment to look forward, perhaps at some of the things that God still wants you to do. Now, when we do get a bit older, sometimes we think that our role is a supportive role. And this is often true, of course it is. But here we see Caleb saying, even though I'm part of things, I still have things for me. So, first thing first lesson in the golden generation is to declare to yourself and to have this conviction, there are still things for me. It's not all about me just supporting everyone else, although when we get older, that is a great ministry. But yet, can you just declare over your life right now, there are still things for me? One of the things that I noticed about Caleb, though, is that he was a man of conviction. Now, these weren't just opinions. Often we talk about conviction as being strong opinions that we're not going to move from. That was not the Hebrew meaning of what the word conviction here means. When Caleb was convicted, it was a conviction to act. He brought back a report from the land according to his convictions. Now, the other people brought back a report and they were convicted about that report, but their convictions were opinions that kept them static and still. I want to ask you, as an older person, do you have convictions that move you, or do you have convictions that stop you? See, that's the difference. Caleb's convictions didn't change. His convictions were faith statements. We can do this. Yet the Lord can still move. It was a conviction to move him on. They were statements of faith or faith to act, and not just opinions. His convictions were not just stubbornness, but the willingness to inspire and to encourage. Remember, his report was, let's go up. We can take this land. His convictions weren't just monuments for people to look at. They were inspirational encouragements to say, yet we can still do this. So I want to talk to you really about, as you get older or as you have been in the faith a while, you do establish some beliefs and you do establish some things that you think, no, that is where I stand. But your convictions have to have two characteristics about them. Number one, they have to inspire your faith so that you can act. There have to be things that spur you on to action. And the second is, there have to be things that inspire others and encourage others. You know, Nicky Gumbel tells a story of a young pastor going to a church one time, and he wanted to inspire the congregation to change. And what he did was he moved the piano all at once. And there was uproar in the church, and I'm sure that's never been the case in your church, but there was uproar. How could you move the piano? So what he did is obviously it was put back in the place and everybody settled down. And what he did was he moved that piano inch by inch by inch by inch until it was moved to the place he wanted to. And nobody noticed the little movement. Nobody noticed that until it was done. What I want to say to you is this. The faith to act doesn't have to always be in a massive big step, but it does always have to be a movement. I wonder if you've got convictions that keep you stepping a little bit further and a little bit further. Another really important lesson when we get older is it's inevitable that we have all been frustrated in some plans that we thought would happen. And I do want to say to you that one of the pains of growing older is the things that you thought when you were young were going to happen, when they turn out not to happen. And this is the choice that we have to make. When we're frustrated, and Caleb was definitely frustrated, He took the report, went into the land, was full of enthusiasm and optimism, and yet he was outvoted, outshouted, outcrowded. And actually, his optimism, his heart connection and his optimism just didn't translate to the people. The other report caused the people, and he says it here, to melt with fear. But do we find Caleb living in that moment of being outvoted? Do we find Caleb living in the moment of saying to himself, well, if they won't believe me, that I'm taking my ball and going home, as it were? No, what we find is that he doesn't get bitter. And that's one of the biggest challenges of the golden years, is dealing with regret and frustration and feeling like that if that's not happened, then I'm not going to join in with what's happening now. And what was happening now in the book of Judges was the dream. You see, one of the things that bitterness can do is to block the dream that is happening now. And so I wonder if, as we do look back when we're older, but I wonder if, as well as me asking you to look forward, I wonder if I can get you to say to yourself, what's happening now? And what was happening in the book of Joshua was the land was being parceled up. The dream was coming alive. It may not have happened the way that Caleb wanted it, but it was happening now. And Caleb, his heart was lighting up so that he could get on board with that exciting project and be a part of it and make the dreams that he once had live. I wonder if there's been some things that you wish would have happened. I wonder if there's going to be some things that God is doing now that will bring about your dreams, your desires, some of your needs. If you jump on board now, then maybe the dream will come true. You see, Caleb was a now person as well as a past person. So what's Caleb's secret? And we have it in this passage. We have it twice. His secret is a heart position. He says that he was wholehearted. And our hearts, I don't know about you, but it's a death to our hearts when a girlfriend says, let's just be friends, because their hearts are not in it. It's a disappointment to us when somebody says, oh, I'll see you there, and they never come, because their hearts are not in it. But the way to avoid disappointment in the Christian life, because there will be many trials, tribulations, there will be many things that come against us, is always to position our hearts for the Lord. That our hearts are wholehearted, that we're all in. There were several people that came to Jesus and said, I'm going to follow you wherever I go, wherever you go. And Jesus said, okay, go and sell all you have. And they walked away sorrowful. I wonder if that young man ever came back to the Lord having reflected on his position. I wonder if there was the person who wanted to bury his dead first, or somebody who wanted to plough a field and turning down the invitation. One of the things that really keeps us fresh, and I don't want to say young, but alive, is wholeheartedness. The whole thing about us jumping in and saying, God, I am in this, I am 100% behind it, I am so with you, whatever you say, I'm doing. If you can keep that into your golden years, that you're not trying to manage God or negotiate with God, that you begin to say, I will do and I will go wherever you want me to go. Many of you would have heard that I'm transitioning from Birmingham City Church at the moment, and some of my friends have said to me, Mark, what are you doing at your age? You've got things set up there. But the way that it happened is that I had, in the middle of the night, a dream stroke kind of experience with the Lord that spoke to me about another church and about the church in London. And for many hours the Lord spoke to me about that. And when I say spoke to me, there were strong thoughts, strong enough for me to write clear things down. And this happened several times. But here's what I want to say to you, and I'm not putting myself forward as the example, but what I want to say to you is no matter what age you are at, God still has plans for you. And so as you give your heart, to position your heart to be in direct heart connection with him, and you're wholehearted, that you're not holding back. Even if your body's weak, so if your heart is wholehearted, God will work out plans for you. And who knows, he may have some really unusual things for you. But here's the real lesson. There are many disappointments in the Christian life. The way to not let those disappointments sink you is to keep your heart wholehearted to him. In closing, I want to say to you today, there are three important things in our golden years that kind of feed into that wholeheartedness. Joshua, in talking about Caleb, was just so blessed, because the first thing about Caleb was he was still willing to serve. He was still willing to say, hey, what can I do? Is there something that I still need to be engaged in? Some of us take a back seat when we're in our golden years, and the lesson of Caleb is that he's willing to serve. He actually says, I feel as vigorous as what I was 40 years ago. And actually, that may be a supernatural physical thing, but actually it's his attitude thing of saying, hey, my mind is still wanting to be engaged. So let me gently challenge you. However old you are you still willing to serve? The second thing that characterizes Caleb as we come into land is that he still had ambition. He said, give me that hill. I still want to take that place. He still had a godly ambition, and I wonder if, without being over the top about it, whether you still have some ambitions that you say, I still would like to see that. Now, I don't want to set you up for disappointment or strange ambitions that aren't realistic. But actually, Caleb saw it and said, I want to work towards that. So first of all, he was willing to serve. It was proved by his attitude of saying, I'm still vigorous, give me a chance. The second is, he said, give me that hill. I want to take that. And then he said, and Joshua gave him Hebron, which was Kiriath Arba, which was named after the greatest Anakite, which is the race of giants. And Caleb was still willing to have a challenge. Serving, ambition, godly ambition, and yet still a challenge. Something that might get done, it might not get done, it might work, it might not work, but nevertheless, it's still a challenge. Now, one of the foolish things of young people is sometimes they take on too big a challenge that isn't realistic. But one of the things about being older is the challenges go out of our lives. And it's almost like we rely on our experience more than we rely on faith. The wholeheartedness of Caleb is, I still have things to do for you, God. And so today, my lovely friends, can I encourage you in your golden years that you still put a challenge in your life? Whether that be the challenge to still witness to somebody once a week, or whether that be the challenge to increase your prayer life, or whether that be the challenge to become part of a fellowship where you can bring all your experience to bear and make a difference. Because I want to say to you, you're not finished until you're done. And if you're not done, you're not finished. Caleb is a great example of someone who didn't allow his frustrations to bring bitterness, but yet kept the challenge and wholeheartedness of following God. So would you please pray with me and say this prophetically over your life? Heavenly Father, give me my hill. I really care about your fellowship. I really think that God still has things for you to do. I really think that it may not be all what you thought it might be in the future, what you thought it might be in the past, but yet I prophesy over you, there is still a hill for all of you to take, collectively, but also individually. God bless you. I care about you. Please stay in touch and be blessed. And I hope this has been a small encouragement to you. If there's anything that you feel isn't from the Lord, let it fall to the floor and take the good things. God bless. Have a great Sunday.